90 days to go, and this is a big one. The Democratic ticket has been formed. Vice President Kamala Harris has selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to be her running mate. This is the warning. What a story it is. The surprise pick has put forward a man who will be ready on day one to be president of the United States. Speaking about weird, Donald Trump buried one of his ex-wives on the first hole of his Bedminster golf course. I suppose when he goes out there to reflect on the good days and better days, because he's never had a bad day in his life, he was not just a man born on third base. He was a man born an inch away from home plate and spent most of his business career backing away from it. It was like he was stealing first base from home. At any rate, Donald Trump did succeed as a con man, a blusterer, and a world-class weirdo and demagogue. And by a combination of fate and circumstances and the intervention of James Comey by the very narrowest of margins, he was able to make the 2020 election about his opponent for just long enough and just enough to narrowly win, becoming the worst president in American history. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, has had bad days, tough times. He grew up in Nebraska. His middle name is his father's name. James, his dad, was diagnosed with lung cancer when Tim was a senior in high school. Tim Walz lost his dad at 18. And today, governor of Minnesota is the Democratic nominee for vice president of the United States. He joins the ranks of giants from Minnesota: Hubert Humphrey, the happy warrior, the conscience of the Democratic Party, the man who fought for a civil rights plank in 1948, a man who broke the Democratic Party on a matter of conscience. Walter Mondale, the former vice president of the United States and the 1984 Democratic nominee for president, and later the U.S. ambassador to Japan, a distinguished patriot and public servant. Tim Walz will face off against J.D. Vance in a debate, and it's going to be great. 158 years or so before Donald Trump pronounced he could shoot somebody in Times Square and get away with it, there was a New York congressman named Dan Sickles who did something similar. He shot his wife's lover in Lafayette Square, across the street from St. John's Episcopal Church, where one day later, Donald Trump would order a tear gas attack so he could desecrate the Bible and get a photo op. It's important to remember that he gassed priests at the president's church, or maybe more precisely, the Church of the Presidents, where American presidents leave the Blair House en route to inauguration, stopping there at the church before they are inaugurated as commander-in-chief. This sacred space is where Donald Trump ordered government thugs to attack peaceful protesters. But that was later. Back in the day, Sickles shot his wife's lover in Lafayette Square, and the result of it was America's first insanity defense. And Sickles got off, only to find himself on the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg as a general in command of Union troops at the edge of the line. Now, what this meant was that if the Confederate Army could get around that edge, it could conceivably get up onto the high ground. And from the high ground, it could sweep away the Union positions, and then the Confederate Army of Robert E. Lee would stand with nothing in its way between them and Washington, D.C. The Union Army would be in their rear. So it was extremely important that that Union line held. But like many generals of the day who were appointed because of political connection, not experience, not competence, Dan Sickles was way out of position. And men from Alabama were storming forward, about to charge up and overwhelm the Union forces, taking the high ground. It would have ended the battle in a Confederate victory, and a Confederate victory in the Battle of Gettysburg would have ended the United States. Thousands of Alabama men were rushing forward, screaming, charging, yelling. William Scott Hancock, who would become the Democratic nominee for vice president in 1880, was a dashing, handsome man, a West Point graduate, a professional soldier, and he saw it all happening. He charged at full speed down the line on his horse, but he didn't stop to offer speeches. He didn't offer praise. He simply asked, "What unit is this?" The response was the 1st Minnesota. He told them to fix bayonets and charge, which they did instantly. The 1st Minnesota, made up of hundreds, a battle-hardened unit, charged thousands, and it turned them back. And to this day, through this very second, it remains the most heroic action in the history of the United States military, the highest casualty action in American history. 84% casualties. That's what it took to save the Union. That's the price to keep the Confederate flag out of the Capitol, through which it was carried on the day of Trump's insurrection. Minnesota has played an outsized role in the story of America. There are some who say, like J.D. Vance, that real Americans look a certain way or believe certain things, but that's garbage. And Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, is going to stand up for the right and take it to him. He's a man who can speak, who can argue, and point out the obvious. He's earthy, he's salty, and that's a good thing. And what a moment for America as this historic ticket comes together. And for the people of the state of Minnesota, another Midwesterner has risen into a position of national leadership. And Shirley Hubert Humphrey is smiling in heaven. The bottom half of the ticket, hailing from his state, the man who had the courage to say this in 1948, "My friends, to those who say that we are rushing this issue of civil rights, I say to them that we are 172 years late. To those who say that this civil rights program is an infringement on states' rights, I say this: the time has arrived in America for the Democratic Party to get out of the shadow of states' rights and to walk forthrightly into the bright sunshine of human rights. People, human beings. This is the issue of the 20th century. People of all kinds, all sorts of people. And these people are looking to America for leadership, and they're looking to America for precept and example. Things are today as they ever were. What a historic moment for the country. What a fulfillment of a vision and a dream and a mark of progress that it will be President Harris and Vice President Walz who defeat the MAGA fascist threat and stand proudly as the Commander-in-Chief and Vice President as America celebrates 250 years of independence and renews itself on that day and sets course towards the city on a hill that John Winthrop prophesied and dreamed about so long ago, refreshed by the vision of John Kennedy, that is the obligation of each American to sail towards. This is the morning, and today history has been made. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning, and I invite you to subscribe on our Substack, on our YouTube channel. Follow us. Welcome to the community.